Welcome to the Heart of Healthcare podcast.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Heart of Healthcare podcast. I'm your co-host, Steve Krause, and today I'm super excited to have Ankit Jain on the pod. Ankit is the co-founder and CEO of Infinitus Systems, an AI company that is focused on automating sort of high-volume, high-stakes phone communications and interactions in healthcare using voice-based agents and co-pilots. So very interesting. And Ankit, before Infinitus, was a serial entrepreneur, a former Google engineer leader who'd founded multiple healthcare companies and actually focused for a while on Google's own AI-focused venture fund. So I think we're going to have a wide-ranging Can't wait to get started. Ankit, thanks for being on the pod.
Thanks for having me. I was looking forward to this. I've been a fan of your pod for quite a bit.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad you listened. Hey, let's start. You, as I mentioned, you did a lot before founding Infinitus, and both in the tech space, in the entrepreneurial space, outside of healthcare, in the venture space. I'm curious, healthcare is so freaking hard. I'm sure you now know that after spending, 6+ years or whatever in it. What was the moment that made you say, okay, I'm going to leave all this other great things behind and start a healthcare company?
At the heart of it, I like solving hard problems. I like taking something that I can see in front of me very clearly as a problem and then figuring out the right solution. Many years ago, before Infinitus, I started a company called Quetra. And at that point, it was kind of the peak of my career at the first stint at Google. And I remember talking to the VP of Google Play, who I reported to, Jamie Rosenberg. And I said, I'm going to go leave to start a company. Most times when people go to leave a company, your manager says, oh no, is there something I can do to save you? Unless the person's terrible. And, I'd like to think back and go, I wasn't terrible. But I remember Jamie telling me something very specific. He said, I'm really proud of you. You're betting on yourself. You're betting on the fact that you've identified a problem. You'll figure out if that's a big or small problem, but you're betting on your ability to go deep into that problem and solve it to the best of your capability. And when we started Infinitus, it was my wife that was the inspiration for getting this started. She's been a healthcare worker for her entire career, and I showed her what large language models could do in 2018. And she said, I wish someone would bring this technology to healthcare, because so much of healthcare, specifically the communication part, happens over phone calls, over faxes, over texts, over portals. She told me this problem, the set of problems, and I said, I would like to solve them. And I brought on my co-founder, someone I've known since middle school. We were college roommates. We've done our last startup together, and neither one of us knew anything about healthcare. But we knew as members of the community, of the society, that these are problems that we face as well. And so we said, let's spend the next decade of our life trying to solve this.
You said this was 2018, and you had played with large language models and seen their power, but they, we didn't yet have the sort of, transformational aha moment, which was, Chat GPT. This was way before that. Tell us, what was the state of what you could do back then and how it's changed? Because you started the company and was really first marketed as sort of a voice RPA company, if I remember, which is robotic process automation. Now it's obviously AI all the time. Give us a state of the state when you started the company.
We almost named the company Voice RPA. So we own the domain voicerpa.com. I'm so glad we didn't do that, right? And, Sham and I, we talk about this a lot, where we were thinking, do we name the company something that is tactical so everyone knows what the company is about, or something that doesn't have too much meaning and we give it meaning over the years? And we went for the latter. But in 2018, 2019, so we started the company February 2019, state-of-the-art large language models were BERT and T5. And they were able to be conversational in nature. They didn't have the ability to be controlled as much. They did not have context in the way we had not architected systems that could keep context across, hundreds of turns. Our average phone call that we automate is 35 minutes long. Today, we've been doing that since 2019. Our first phone calls were that long. And so we really used the language models of the time in order to understand what the other party was saying, not to generate responses. We use them to map onto what we call a discrete action space, a set of blessed things that the machine is allowed to say, because they were hallucinating a lot. They were going off the rails a lot. So we put those guardrails in order to get our customers to really feel comfortable with the machine being able to have those conversations. The thing that changed when we got to that Chat GPT moment, everyone over Thanksgiving and Christmas started using it, was that we didn't have to sell the fact that technology could have conversations. That became part of the zeitgeist. Until the first 3 years of the company, not only were we selling our product, but we were selling the viability of the technology, because most of our buyers in healthcare, they believed we were making this up and that we were exactly.
It was like some kind of
And I
voodoo.
think changed. And then we got to being able to show, hey, listen, we're deployed, we're scaled. It's not just hype, and we've guardrailed it the right way. Because I do think to this day, the biggest question AI review boards and governance boards ask is, how do you reduce or zero out hallucinations? How do you make sure there's no biases? And how do you make sure our brand won't take a hit in a headline if someone was to talk to your AI bot about intimacy or about, topics that we don't want it to talk about?
Because obviously, not only has the technological landscape changed and what you can do with these technologies, and it's changing at just like an unbelievable pace, but, frankly, the competitive dynamic in your space has changed too a lot, right? You're seeing it from other well-funded startups that are vertically focused. You're seeing from horizontally focused, well-funded startups. You're probably seeing it from big tech. You're probably seeing it from health systems thinking they can co-develop these solutions with other folks, maybe even develop them on their own. Some who are probably naive, but I bet still think they could do that. Is your history in this space an asset? Everyone always worries about tech debt. And how do you sell against just an onslaught of new competition?
So
A moment's
technology
notice
is
here.
changing. The competitive landscape is changing. I think there's a new company coming out that says they do voice AI, or an existing company that adds on voice AI as a capability every single day. And I think it's exciting. I think it pushes everyone to really become the best version of themselves. I think for the first 4 years, I don't think I ever talked to a customer who was considering anything other than throwing more bodies at the problem, which is what they've done for decades, right? So there's a few things that happen as this change happens. One, I think more and more buyers, or more and more prospective buyers, are becoming comfortable with the idea of using AI to solve this problem. So that's a huge tailwind, because now they're making a buying decision, not just not maybe sometime in the future, because now there's pressure from all of their competitors who are adopting it. So the buying cycle has gotten shorter, which I think is a positive. There is a little bit of the buy versus build discussion happening at some of the largest enterprises. For what it's worth, that happens with every new technology wave that happens. This happened with mobile. Are they going to build their own mobile apps, or are they going to use a third party to do that? I think 2025 was the year of AI agents, where everyone saw the potential of AI agents. 2026, unfortunately, I think is going to be the year where a lot of companies think they can build it too, because with the improvements in computer use agents and just LLM technology in general, it's easy to build a demo. So I think a lot of internal teams are going to be able to build demos and convince leaders who are not as educated as those in the technology ecosystem, look, we can do it too. And those internal projects will get funded. And 2027, in my opinion, will be the year they go, listen, we can build one or two agents, but we're not going to be the companies that manage fleets of AI agents. That's better suited for startups or companies that have built the platform to do so. So there's going to be a little bit of whiplash that happens here.
Interesting. So you think 2026 is actually the year where maybe internal development enabled by sort of agentic platforms where you could build on top of actually will be tried more in healthcare?
I think so.
In your mind.
And my optimistic view on this is it will get people to get a taste of what this can unlock for their digital plus human workforce, and not too much of a negative experience on when they fail. Because the reality is you have to do a lot of iteration to get things to work.
Yeah.
The first time you call 1 million patients, guess what happens? 200,000 of them pick up, and the other 800,000 don't. And you're like, well, what's the ROI on this? Well, you have to tune a lot of things in order to get that number from 200,000 to 500 or 600,000, and then also be available 24/7, 365 to take the inbound phone calls, which for what it's worth, I do think the 6.5 years we've spent on this journey has taught us a lot, not just about technology, which I think is 20% of the problem, but integrations, implementations, change management, getting a workforce to know that this is a complement to them, not a supplement of them, because that's a critical part of adoption. Just having technology bought by the IT team doesn't mean it succeeds or has ROI. You have to become part of the fabric of the entities buying you, and every person has to feel like this is moving them forward. In the same way, the EHR moved the work and the workflow forward, these AI agents have to move the workforce and the workflow forward.
I love the prediction. I'm like you. I think it's a great thing in that it'll get people a taste of how these technologies can improve their lives and lead. But I'm skeptical that they're going to be successful. It's always helpful to get someone on the ground's view. Hey, I wanted to stick on a couple of things that you mentioned because I did want to talk about defensibility here. And obviously, defensibility is sort of one part product and product iteration, probably one part kind of go to market. One part, the point you were talking about, integration, implementation, customer success. So let's stick on the product side first, because you talked about all the things that you've done over the years to tune the product, to improve the connection rate, if you will. I'd be curious, talk about some of those things in this space of conversational AI, some of the learnings that you've had around the product side and what has needed to be done to make it as impactful as it has
There's
been
a
for you
whole
guys.
laundry list of them, but I'll share a few for the listeners here. One, I think making sure that you get the most connect rate, because if people don't pick up, it doesn't matter how good the technology is, or if people don't call back, it doesn't matter how good the technology is, you're not going to accomplish the outcome. And part of that is a lot of our business model is outcome driven. The way we charge for it and that incentive alignment is critical. The second one is our security and compliance posture as a company, and as as a product team. We really think about the data compliance, data governance, and AI efficacy. Are we able to control it? Are we able to keep it consistent, compliant, and make sure that for anything critical, you have the ability to break glass and escalate to the right people, knowing when the right time to do so is. It's not about a world of just AI. It's a world of AI plus humans, and that together is critical. I think there's many companies in the space that go in with a viewpoint that AI can do everything. You know what? Eventually, it will be able to do everything, but we're not quite there yet.
What can AI
Uh,
do right now in your
listen,
field,
I think
Ankit, just out
AI
of
does a
curiosity?
really good job of exchanging information, of collecting information, of making sure a patient who wants to access knowledge has it accessible 24/7. I always joke that healthcare runs from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then it shuts down. Most of us that work
That's
and
so
have
true.
families don't think about healthcare until after 5 p.m. Please call us back during business hours, or even the online chatbots are often not available because they're backed by humans. So we go to Dr. Google, Gemini, GPT, Claude, instead of being able to interface with the healthcare system. And I think we have an opportunity to flip that on its head and say, actually, your healthcare provider and the system is available 24/7, 365. So when you have that kid that has a rash at 10 p.m., you can get your first viewpoint from your PCP's office, the AI version of it, rather than Google or GPT or rushing to the ER.
You were new to healthcare, and I don't know. There's always this classic debate in our industry: does product win or does go to
Yeah.
market distribution win? Be curious about your view now that you've been in this for a bunch of years. But on the go to market side, what have been some of your learnings and unlocks that you've had in
Yeah.
Infinitus running the
So
company?
to the first part of the question, I think you need something magical in the product. Something when you show it to your early customers, they start imagining the future. When we showed our first AI agents in 2019, I still remember being in those rooms and people's jaws were literally dropping, going, I didn't think a machine could do that. That voodoo moment is actually really powerful. And as it's become easier to build demos, suddenly there's a lot more skepticism because people go, well, I've seen 100 of these
Yeah,
demos. What
I've
makes
seen
you
these. Yeah,
different, right? And so internally, we challenge the team to go, not only do we need to deliver something real, but we need to have those moments where there's an emotional reaction to what we're building, because people buy based on emotion. The second thing that I think we've done that might be different than most most healthcare startups that I have come across in the last 6.5 years is we've really focused on the largest healthcare entities. There's some that start with the SMBs and slowly over years graduate to mid-market and enterprise. We just started at the biggest ones because I think the way you build the business is different. It's actually counter to um, a lot of the wisdom that is shared by the startup ecosystem, because people go, hey, go test out and try it with the smaller folks, make sure your product is right. But I think the requirements for the biggest entities are fundamentally different.
Vastly
We work with
different.
8 of the 10 top life sciences manufacturers in the country, 3 of the 4 national payers in the country. And each of them has bespoke systems that you have to integrate with. Their security and compliance requirements are way different than the average health system that does not have an AI governance board. You have to go through way more hoops every step of the way. And so our company is really well suited for the largest enterprises. But that also means our average contract value is larger and, to my surprise, every year continues to grow. So when I describe the company that we're building, we're saying in 5 years, we're going to have 100 companies that are spending between $10 and $50 million on us, which is very different than many other companies that say we're building a go-to-market motion that is to have 1,000 companies that spend $1 million on us. You end up having a similar, if not potentially larger TAM, but it's a very different business model. Our sales team is not going to be 100 people. It's going to be a dozen people.
It strikes me you're taking much more of a horizontal approach. And as I think about the competitive dynamics, who keeps you up the most tonight? Is it a Sierra, who we actually had one of their co-founders on this pod a few months ago? Is it a broader tech platform? Is it like the Epic in the provider world and whoever the equivalent is in the payer or the manufacturer world? Like,
The thing that keeps me up is the fact that there's such a huge problem to go after and we're not going after it fast enough. So what I drive my team to do is, let's go faster. Let's solve the problems. Let's figure out what things are working and double down on them and what things are not working and back off from them. I think we're at the earliest of innings of this kind of AI adoption. I don't think it's about one player or the other. I think eventually the one that works is going to be the one that iterates fast and just grows. And that could be a vertical player. That could be a horizontal player. We're betting that it's us. I think the thing that there's 3 things we think will differentiate us when we look at the market 5 years from now. The first is our ability to deploy and scale these AI agents faster than anybody else in the ecosystem. And that's going to be because of the technology platform we built, but also the scar tissue that we are gaining as we succeed and fail in different situations. And other reason we'll move fast is the set of integrations we're building into a number of systems. The second one, and I think this is where we differentiate from probably most of the horizontal players, the non-healthcare specific players, is we're going to go deeply, deeply clinical. And that's going to be a layer of safety, security, evaluations, and compliance that...
What does that mean? How deep clinical?
Everything but diagnosing we want to be able to do. And that means our systems need to be available 24/7, 365 to ask about post-discharge, be able to pre-op, be able to do onboarding, like whether it's administrative or clinical in nature, anything that our short-staffed workforce can offload to the AI agents, we want to be able to do so. The only way people are going to get comfortable with that is with the right level of evaluations, the right level of guardrails, and being able to mimic the brand's voice. The way the Mayo Clinic presents itself through its employees versus the Cleveland Clinic are very different. And if AI agents can't be an extension of their teams, they're not going to be adopted at scale because it can't be a disjointed experience for that patient.
Let me ask you another, what keeps you up at night? And it might not be about your company, but just generally, because you talked about things like, going deep in clinical, about governance, security. Like, if things go wrong here, like, what's the biggest concern that you have that could present a challenge for our entire industry?
As folks have brought up different specific competitors to me, I almost always wish well upon them because I think the market is a lot larger than any of us expected to be. And the more success we see here, the bigger the market's going to get. And so, but the thing that will hold us back is if you start having catastrophic errors. It doesn't matter if it's us or somebody else. If we do something that becomes a headline or that causes someone to lose their job at a health system, at a payer, at a pharma company, guess what's going to happen? That's going to spread like wildfire in their circles, and it's going to chill the adoption of this technology. So we're at that wave and at that time of this technology adoption that we want success stories. We want people to believe in this technology the same way in which we believe that it can be an agent of change in healthcare, right? The startup founders and the venture capitalists are the ultimate optimists. We want to be at the cutting edge of it. We need the folks on the other side of the chasm to not only test it out, but to feel success, because then they will invest more in this, and this will, these kind of technologies will take off. Which is why I think it's important for all of us to push everybody else in the ecosystem to be responsible about it, not just take ChatGPT and unlock it in a highly clinical context, because you know what? Without the right guardrails, mistakes will be made, which is why we talk so loudly about our guardrails, about our safety story, because we think that's what's going to be differentiating for companies like ours to succeed in this space.
How do you think this industry should be regulated?
I think it should be folks in the industry coming together to define things like what safe AI is, and then people raising their hand and say, I agree to follow what those pieces are. And the reason why I think that's important, rather than top-down regulation, is stuff is changing. The industry is moving too fast. And so we need to be able to adapt quickly and understand what safety and security and compliance mean. The leaders in the space come together and go, we agree to constantly reevaluate this. And as we make progress as an industry, either tighten or loosen what we agree to do in a joint manner.
So is that like an industry coalition in your mind versus
it could be through, a government agency bringing the folks together and then making it a voluntary registry of sorts. And we've seen this administration do that a couple of times with voluntary registries. I think those are very powerful because it allows people to self-regulate and for others to hold them accountable to something that they signed up for.
One area of regulation in this space that I've seen actually in my own diligence of some of these companies is provider's AI bot fighting with the payer's AI bot, and a provider or payer AI bot calling a consumer and over telemarketing, violating some of the consumer privacy laws. I mean, is that also a risk? And how do we navigate that as an industry?
Every new technology that comes out leads to some very positive things. The fact that we can now engage our patient populations at a scale that we couldn't because of a lack of a workforce, but it also unlocks the room for more fraud, waste, and abuse. I'd argue a lot of the pain and friction that exists between providers and payers today exists because of the 1% of folks that create fraud, waste, and abuse. And why do prior authorizations exist? It's because of 1% of people that are abusing their ability to prescribe something, or the 2% of revenue cycle management companies that are upcoding or overbilling in certain cases, but then 99% of people that pay the burden because of the friction. And so the more we can come together to drive the right incentive structures, and we're seeing this in the prior auth space start to play out with gold carding starting to scale up pretty dramatically, or the number of codes that require prior auth going down, it's going to lead to better systems. I think the same maturation will happen even for technologies like voice AI and conversational AI, where you will see the increase in usage of them, and then you will suddenly see 1% of folks that are doing fraud, waste, and abuse, and you'll see an overcorrection where the folks receiving the phone calls will push back hard while we understand the right controls. And then you kind of have the natural balance that ends up going through it. But again, I always think history precedes the future. And we're seeing this happen in the world of prior auth, where you saw an overcorrection. And now you're seeing kind of a natural balance starting to play out. We're going to see the same thing with AI and conversational AI.
Super, super helpful perspective. One other thing I want to touch upon that's a risk I would note is, frankly, healthcare is in every single metropolitan area the largest single employer most of the time in that area. And all types of jobs, blue-collar jobs, white-collar jobs, but a lot of jobs. And, this isn't just you. This is many of the companies that are even if they're starting as co-pilots, it's not too hard to imagine that they become truly agentic and will lead to jobs being lost. And that's true not just in healthcare, but in so many other industries. Like, I guess two questions. Like, one, how do you sort of deal with that as a risk, right? And the users are going to use your technology and them rejecting it because of fear of job loss. But also then secondly, like, how do you think about that as a human being and someone who cares about this world, like, that your company ultimately could lead to that?
So the joke I say often is that on one side, there's a set of longevity companies that are trying to make sure we live for as long as we can. And then there's the set of AI companies that we joke are going to get rid of all the work that we do. So what are we going to do sitting around with nothing to do for a very long period of time? But my personal belief is I don't think we're, one, anywhere close to that. And two, we are not seeing any proof that AI is taking these jobs away all. 0% of our customers have let go of a person after adopting us. They're actually just getting to the
Wow.
work that they were falling farther and farther behind on. It's like the example I gave you. We don't have
Wait,
zero.
0% of your customers have
Correct.
gotten rid of a single job. And how many
Uh,
customers do you have? Just like
it's about
roughly a
30,
number?
and they're again, we 44% of the
Okay,
Fortune
wow.
50. These are very large enterprises. They had so much backlogged work or stuff that they wanted to do to improve the patient experience that their people are finally getting to do while AI does the work that the people were locked up doing. And so I think what's going to happen for the next 5 to 10 years as AI does more is we're going to have a better patient experience. We're going to have better healthcare economics. We're going to have a system that we go, I can't believe this is the world we used to live in 5 or 10 years ago. I don't think we're going to a place where our largest employers are not employing people. The thing I told you, we don't have enough rooms and enough workers to see every patient as they come in. We have delays for months upon months to see a specialist. And part of that is capacity. But if you can unlock capacity, if providers and whether it's administrative or clinical workers in healthcare are not doing some of the stuff that AI can do, it means that we will be able to see patients faster. We will be able to be more efficient in getting them diagnosed, getting them the right therapies or cures, and moving stuff along the system in a more efficient way. I think we're years away from true job loss happening. Now, I'm not going to say there's not going to be any, but I think there's also going to be a lot of job creation that happens.
I'm curious, what's a belief that you have about where health AI will go or will be 5 to 10 years from now that might be different than others have?
I don't think we'll think about it in terms of health AI. I think we're just going to think about it in terms of healthcare. Today, we talk about it from a co-pilot or agent perspective. I just think we're going to have a much more personalized healthcare system, the kind that we had arguably 25 or 30 years ago, but it hasn't scaled with the number of patients, with the number of disease states and chronic conditions that we have. I think we're going to get back to some of that. And I think technology is going to make healthcare personal again, which I think is something that we all want. We don't want to feel like a number walking into a clinic or into a pharmacy and getting the same generic experience. I think we're going to go back to what we had.
We talked at the beginning of how you've had worn many different hats in your career. You were relatively new to healthcare as an entrepreneur, 6 or so years ago. What's one or a couple things that you've learned in that journey that you would share with future entrepreneurs that are looking to get into this wildly complicated and unique industry?
2010, first startup I was part of was acquired by Google, and I was a 25-year-old at the time. I did something that I don't think most people did, and I don't think I've ever talked about this. I started sending cold GChat messages internally at Google to VPs and said, hey, I'd love to grab a lunch with you if you'd be open to it, or walk with you between meetings. And there was one VP at the time, I believe he's still there, Jim Kolaturos. He'd been at Google in 2010 for about 10 years or 11 years on the partnerships team. And we had lunch and we found out that he had gone to the same high school I had many years before me. And he said, Ankit, you have a lot of energy. But if there's one thing I'll tell you, just remember it takes 1 year to get 1 year's experience. And I think in healthcare, that couldn't be more true. I think it's important to have the energy and come in and try to change things. We still do this every single day, but I feel like there's so much more to healthcare that I even don't know now than I did when I started. I think every day we answer a question, we ask 10 more. And I think that's part of the magic of healthcare, but also the biggest opportunity in healthcare is to go in with that first day mentality and ask, why is something done that way? And the thing that refreshes me about healthcare that is so different than every other industry I've worked in is everyone's fundamental incentive is aligned. Everyone wants to make the experience better because they see it as something that's improving for themselves. It's coming from within. Along the way, do they want to make money? Yes. Along the way, do they want to get customers? Yes. But everyone wants to improve healthcare, whether it's your partner, whether it's your investor, whether it's your customer, whether it's your employee. That's why people join. And they understand it's going to take a while. But I think that's truly refreshing about healthcare.
I love that. I hope 2026 is a great year for you and for Infinitus. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your journey, what you guys are doing, and the future of health AI, or just maybe healthcare in general, as you said.
Thanks
so
for having
thanks
me.
so much.